Now, what happens is DeSoto makes his round through Florida, makes his round through the southeast, visiting, and a lot of people will start to die, and and so said that when the first Europeans hit Florida, and we hadn't even talked about Florida, but you got to bring Florida in, because when the Europeans hit Florida, there was over 100,000 people here, native tribes, probably over 6 or 7 different tribes, different dialects, and some very civilized, and some of them not so civilized. Like when I say civilized, like the Calusa Indians, and down in the Fort Myers area, that group there, they had a king, and they had and a president, and then they had a warrior class that protected the king, the president. So, and everybody was subservient under those guys, much like the Lamar with the Creeks. Everybody in that area, the Choctaws, were subservient to the Muskogee people. And I'll allude to it why later on. I mean, why that they felt more superior to them. But in Florida, like I said, by the time the Spanish settled Florida, within 40 years, 80% of the population has vanished. And somebody told me that the way that you killed an Indian in those days was invite him to supper and then sneeze on him. So he had no immunity to you, so you got him. And so Florida was pretty well left vacuum. So, except for remnants of the Timucuas in the north. And so the Spanish people brought in their livelihood, and we like to kick them around because they killed all those people, but they still brought, when they brought their culture in, they brought a lot of things that we still have today. And when we tell the Florida history, we have to tell that the Spanish were here, and that they brought the first horse to this continent, and they brought domestic cows and the pigs and all the farm animals that we enjoy on our dish today. And they started farming, and they started farming across Tallahassee, from St. Augustine to Tallahassee, and that's known as Rancho La Chua. And that big area right across there was a known cattle ranch for the Spanish, and it's a great place to raise cattle. But then I got to keep backing up every now and then, because the British are making their stronghold in South Carolina, and the Patriot boys in New York is trying to get organized, and they're trying to build up an army, and they're starting to start a revolutionary war. So Indians were good buffers in those days, because you could have a civilization, a group of Indians, and then the British. So that's how they kept boundaries from each other's, because you never wanted the Native Americans to get upset with you. And the colonists, the Patriots, they were the same way too. They didn't try to rock the boat with the Native people, and they kept their trade. So the British and the Patriots spent a lot of money, a lot of time trying to sway the Muskogee people into siding with them during the Revolutionary War on whatever side they needed. And you see in history, you see it's kind of a split story, because some was with the Patriots and a lot was with the British. And the British, you know, they gave us a lot of stuff that we thought we needed, and the silver trinkets and stuff. And also they gave us the gun, and that revolutionized our hunting, and it revolutionized a lot of things. You know, back in the day, we still had bow and arrows and spears, and we had to, you know, 30 yards maybe to get a good shot on a deer. Now we got a musket that'll shoot 150 yards, you know, and it just made our, you know, our hunting so much superior and efficient now. We could, so the hide industry got really important, because in those days that was a high commodity, the skins, because that's what everybody wore, you know, and that's what they made. Shoes, hinges, anything was, the high skins was very important, and we were in that trade. So by the end of, just before the end of the 1600s, groups of Seminoles are moving into Florida, and they're taking over a lot of this vast land, and cattle ranching becomes a big, important business for my people, because, and there's document letters from the Cuban government thanking Indian chiefs like Cowkeeper and Sea Coffee and the likes up in the Alachua County around Payne's Prairie and all that. That's where the stronghold was, and they raised thousands of head of cattle, and they and the Spanish government is thinking thinking the Seminole. By then they weren't Seminoles yet. They were still Creeks, because John Stewart had just named them that, you know, called Creeks, because we never did have a name for ourselves. We never did call ourselves Muskogees either. We just were human beings, you know, in the woods. And so eventually, you know, the history goes, and we become Seminoles. And really the name, it's kind of tricky, because Seminoles, when you talk to a general, he was referring to the Miccosukee speaking people, and when he referred to a creek, he was speaking to the Muskogee people. And there's a vast difference in the language, and the reason, I'll tell you. Remember, I tell you that the language will play a whole big part in our tradition. Is that when God was here on earth, and He was giving us our belief system, our traditions, and our medicines, He spoke Creek when he was here in America. And so if you want to be a medicine man and you wanted to be a traditionalist, you have to know the Creek language, because all the medicine, all the ceremonial dances, most of the power language is in the Creek language.